Hey class, we're going to be learning about lights and shadows in this video. Here I have a simple object known as a cube. So I want to show you all the different aspects of how light and shadow play on this object. So first of all, I want to tell you that the light is coming from here. I'll show you with my pencil the direction the light is coming. So the way I have my lamp set up, the light is coming in this angle. And as you can see, it is hitting the top of this cube very directly. That's why this top part is the brightest thing on the cube. Now, blur your eyes a little bit, or squint your eyes, and tell me which side on here, which side, this side or this side, is darker. If you blur your eyes, you can definitely easily tell that this side right here is much darker than this side. That all has to do with the angles compared to the light, to the angle of the light. Because all light really is these rays or waves that are coming and hitting something. Now, when it hits the object and bounces into your eyes, that's how you can see it. So you can use your 5 perceptual skills whenever light is around. However, if I were to turn off the light, all of a sudden there's no light bouncing off the object, and so it's almost impossible to make it out. All right, so I'm putting the light back on, and now we can watch how it hits the object in different ways. So when you are drawing, you need to pay attention to what are the brightest areas, what are the medium tones, and then what are the darkest areas. I'm going to teach you a skill where you are going to create a gray tone to your paper that's going to be about this color, kind of a mid-tone gray, and then you're going to have to add more graphite with your pencil to make it darker, like right here. And to create this light area, you're going to use your eraser. Remember I told you your eraser is your best friend? Well, you're going to actually use your eraser to create the right tone. So you're actually going to be drawing with your eraser. So let me show you a couple of different shadows, and I'm going to teach you the names, all right? So here and here are two different shadows. The one that's actually part of the object is called the form shadow, F-O-R-M, form shadow. That's because it's a shadow that is created because that side of the object is just away from the light. The light can't get there because it's just turned away from the light. All right? Now, if I were to rotate this object, then my formerly dark part will get lighter. It just all depends on its position, okay? So when it's turned away, it's going to be darker, okay? Now this one's not as turned away as much, so it's much lighter, okay? Now let's get back to shadows. So that's called the form shadow. Now, this baby right here, the one that's on the paper or the surface of the flat surface that this object's sitting on, that is called a cast shadow, C-A-S-T, cast. Have any of you ever gone fishing? When you throw your line out into the water, it's called casting, right? So this is a cast shadow because it's thrown out against whatever surface this is sitting on. And usually it'll take approximately the shape of whatever the object is. So in this case, we have a very straight-edged, kind of cubical, angular object. So the cast shadow is also kind of has some right angles and very, very hard edge. If I were to have a more complicated object, I have a really cool object I want to put here to show you that a cast shadow will usually just look a lot like whatever the object is. So I have here a cute little chair from a dollhouse. Now, you can see that the cast shadow, it looks a lot like part of the object, and it just correlates. So they relate to each other, all right? So you should never be really surprised at the shape that the cast shadow makes, right? It's just like when you see a shadow of your shadow on the ground, it usually looks like you, just probably all stretched out. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a different shaped object. We're going to look at, okay, so here I have a spherical object. So I want to show you some of the different parts of the light and shadow that you're going to see. So first of all, do you see this little really light tiny circle here? That is called the highlight. H-I-G-H-L-I-G-H-T, kind of like the highlights people put in their hair. A highlight is just the lightest part of something. So they call it the highlight because it's just the highest amount of light that there is. Basically, that would mean because this is round, because it's an actual sphere, the light only hits this one spot the most. Every other area of this is moving away. It's curving away from that light. So yes, it's going to get light, but no spot will be as bright as that spot because that spot is technically the closest to our light source, which is over here on the right. Okay, so we got the highlight. Now, this area around you can just call plain old light, just light. Okay, now you're going to start to see some areas over here. First of all, over here, you're going to see what's called the mid-tone. This is a little bit of a grayer area right here, okay? And then you're going to see something that looks kind of like a crescent moon, a dark crescent moon. I really do want this guy to be over here because it has a much better, really much better shadow core when it's over here. Okay, beautiful. That's perfect. Okay, so you will see a very dark sliver, kind of like a crescent moon shape that if you blur your eyes, squint your eyes, it's the darkest part. Now, let me test you. Is that a form shadow or a cast shadow? You tell me. All right, if you answered form shadow, you are correct. It is a form shadow. And this is called the shadow core. All right, so the core shadow, C-O-R-E, all right, core shadow, the shadow core. Either way is correct. You can say core shadow or shadow core. It is the darkest part of all the darkest of all the shadows, okay? Now, just past the shadow core, right along the edge of the object is something that I just love. It makes your drawings, it makes everything look so 3D, and it is called reflected light. Reflected light. It's right here. Because if you blur your eyes, can you notice that this right here is lighter than the shadow core? It's definitely lighter. Why is it light? Well, I'll tell you. I'll give you a hint. The answer is hidden in its name. So reflected light. That means light is coming down from, okay, so light's coming from our source. It's coming down. It is hitting the paper, okay? It's hitting the paper and it is bouncing. It's bouncing. Because remember how light bounces off of stuff and bounces into our eyes? That's how we see, right? So light's coming down. It's hitting the paper or surface, whatever it is. It's bouncing back onto the ball. That is creating this reflected light. Now, because it's a second-hand light, it's not direct. This is direct, so it's always going to be brighter. But this is not, the reflected light can never, ever be as bright as the direct light. Never, because it's second-hand. It's used. Have you ever gotten used clothing? I always go to Savers and get used clothing. Hey, nobody knows. You got it at Savers. It's my little secret. Anyway, so it's second-hand light. It's not as bright as this direct light, okay? Uh-oh, I think it's gonna roll around again. Anyway, but what's really cool about reflected light is that there's nothing like it to make your sphere look three-dimensional. And I'm going to teach you how to use your eraser to put in that reflected light. It's going to look so nice when we do it in class. Okay, now let's talk about this shadow right here. Now, do you remember what it's called? Hint, has to do with fishing. Yep, it's the cast shadow. All right, so this cast shadow, as you can see, is rounded. No surprise there, right? Because we've got a round object. So this is also rounded, okay? You will notice that it's always darkest right here where it's just underneath the bottom of the object. That is where it is the darkest, okay? And then as it moves away from the object and gets out to the furthest spot, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter, okay? I'm not sure if you can see that, but that is what happens. Now, it's usually darker than the shadow core, but you know, there are times when the shadow core and the cast shadow are equally dark. So there you go. That is all the parts of a sphere. So we are going to be drawing spheres in class, and it'll be fun. All right, so let's move on to another object. How about a cylinder? Okay, so a cylinder, although rounded, is pretty straight up and down. It's round, but it's round in a vertical way, right? It goes up and down and it's rounded this way. Okay, so as you can see, the lights and shadows, the patterns they make are going to be vertical. All right, they're going to be like stripes, basically, okay? So you will see that where the light is hitting, that's the highlight, okay, that's the lightest area. There's a stripe of extremely bright area of light right here, very bright stripe, right? And then slowly, slowly, we've got our mid-tone area. That's kind of like a light gray. And then blur your eyes or squint your eyes and you will see the shadow core. The shadow core is usually just past the mid-tone, so you can see the shadow core right here, okay? Blur your eyes, squint if you have to. And then you kind of see this zone of reflected light right here. Now, over here we have another dark area of shadow. So the reflected light is kind of in a weird spot. It's not right near the edge like it was with the ball. It's kind of like in this weird zone right here. I think it's just because this object is so tall that this side way over here on the left is just completely blocked from the light. So that's why it's so dark. And this is a beautiful example of how the cast shadow is always darkest right near the object, okay? And sometimes the surface is the lightest right near the darkest part of the shadow. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we're supposed to be the light of the world, and you know how God is light. Like everything about everything that Jesus taught was about bringing light into a dark world. Well, you really can't see the light without the darkness. So the darker this world gets, the lighter we have to be, right, to contrast it and to fight the darkness. So don't go to the dark side, people. Okay, so when you're studying light and shadow, it's just a great way to meditate on the things of God. So again, just a reminder, this is the cast shadow, this is the form shadow, okay? All right, let's see if I have any other cool objects. Oh, hey, I have a cool object. Guess who? It's Iggy. Hey! Now, Iggy's got really cool shape. He's got kind of like a flat upper part, and then he's got his side. Whoop! Hey Iggy, where you going, buddy? So anyway, Iggy catches light and shadow in an interesting way too.